Welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, I have Armstrong Williams, political pundit, entrepreneur, columnist, TV host of the Armstrong Williams Show. He's been in the game a long time. Mr. Williams, welcome to Indisputable.
My pleasure.
Let's get right into it. I want to talk about voting rights and voting access. Obviously, you are well aware of what's happening with government policy, state laws in reference to voter rights or voter restriction. Most of these new policies have been introduced by way of the big lie. That's the premise for much of it. So do you believe that Donald Trump had the election stolen? I don't want to presume anything. Do you believe he got beat or had the election stolen?
He lost.
Okay, and the legislation that has been promoted by those in the Republican Party based on the false pretense that there was somehow some malfeasance in the election. What are your thoughts about that? Well,
you're always having debate on reform election laws. That debate took place when Al Gore lost to Bush. It took place when Mrs. Clinton lost. I mean, you're gonna always have questionable balance, questionable issues when it comes to the elections, where the integrity and the credibility is questioned. But overall, I think the American voting system is overall pretty good, and very few people are denied the basic right to vote, and that their vote count. Anytime you have an election that is very close, like the two aforementioned, and then President Trump, the difference is that former Vice President Al Gore could have prolonged and had a protracted process, even after the Supreme Court's decision. But he decided to become a statesman and do the honorable thing, accept his loss, and hopefully that the system would be improved in the future, and it was. The same with Mrs. Clinton. They wanted her to stand her ground, not back down, not concede. And she said, for the good of the country, I'm gonna concede so this country can heal and we can move on and continue to be that example of democracy. The president, the former president of the United States, former President Donald Trump, was quite different. He whipped the country into a frenzy even before the election, setting the dynamic in place, saying, if I don't win, it's because of the flawed election system in Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Florida and Arizona and Nevada and these other key battleground states. You're always gonna find some malfeasance with the election. That's just gonna always happen. What should have happened was, and I give Mitch MCConnell credit, he waited until the Electoral College made their ruling around December 7th before he said this was over. Joe Biden is the president of the United States, but former President Donald Trump is just a different kind of person. He did not want to concede. He felt that he was bigger than the process himself. He allowed his voters to allow this to be dragged out with lawyers to make them believe that in places like Georgia and other places that there's this process and to steal the election and overturn the will of the people. And what was more unfortunate about this is that he had Republicans in the Senate and in the House who did not have the backbone and to stand up and say, Mr. President, we cannot continue this long protracted process where we continue this, where people feel disenfranchised. And then you had what happened on January 6th at the Capitol. And so he just was not a big person where he was able to concede and take the loss and say, listen, I've lost this election, let me move on and build a party and build the country in a different way.
Armstrong, you and I, we agree on more today than we probably did 5 years ago. And it's quite ironic. I don't agree with conservative policy typically, okay? But let's talk about some things we do agree on. We agree that Donald Trump set the trap basically, because he was saying the same thing when he ran for president the first time. He was saying, listen, if I don't win, it's rigged against me. And then he utilized the same methodology in his reelection bid. He said, if I don't win, that means that they cheated, it's rigged against me. So he was willing to be this guy from day one. Why do you think he was able to fundamentally transform the Republican Party in one term, being one man?
Well, listen, you have to. The interesting thing, Dr. Richey, is that Donald Trump has always been the same person who ran for president of the United States. I mean, there was nothing about him that ever changed. I mean, you could never call him a hypocrite.
But let me ask you this: did you expect it to? Because some people thought, okay, he's putting up an act and he's going to become more presidential. Remember that terminology? There was a, can he be presidential? Can he be presidential? And so, and he actually, during the campaign, he did some things that were presidential like, and he didn't really like it. And the sign in his campaign office was, let Trump be Trump. Everybody who worked for him had to first see that sign and agree to it, let Trump be Trump. Did you expect him to pivot in any way, or did you expect him to govern precisely like he campaigned?
Well, listen, let me just say this. Obviously, I've known the former president for quite some time. I still have respect for him. I felt he did a lot of good for the country, for the economy, even foreign policy. There are a lot of things I respected about him. But the Trump that you speak of that gave you hope was the Trump that was on teleprompter when it was scripted.
Right.
That Trump was not who Donald Trump really was. And if there was a singular theme, Dr. Richey, for the Donald Trump presidency, it was this tendency for his supporters and his critics to judge it on the character and behavior and the personality and the tweets of the president, and not the substance and the impact of his policies. And so as such, more people were caught up in the personality and the wild stuff he says, referring to them as SOBs, and the things that he would say that would just make you want to just say, oh my God, this is not presidential. This is not what we expect from the president of the United States. But this is who he always was. And so I've always believed, now if he were probably in his 30s and 40s, there's a possibility that people can transform and change. It's very difficult to change someone who's over 60 years old, and particularly when they become 70. I mean, look at your grandparents and your great-grandparents. People are set in their ways. It's just not gonna happen. And for the media to set up the dynamics that this is a possibility for Donald Trump was another disservice. He could change, and he's still the same person now, even though the Southern District of New York only filed charges as it related to the Trump organization and the Perks. They did not go after his family. They did not go after him. And he's still using this as a victory lap to somehow further his narrative that the elections were stolen. He doesn't even have the humility or the capacity to say, you know what? Maybe I did contribute to some of what happened to me. Maybe I should take responsibility and do what's better for the country. And
man, come on, never. He would never do that. So here's the thing, brother. What in the hell are y'all going to do? And let me put it this way. Let me put some context here. Because I actually want the Republican Party to get it together. Let me tell you why I want you to get it together, the conservative movement. It's needed. Because when you have a party that's so far out there now, where the conspiracy theorists, the QAnon folks, the insurrectionists are controlling the leadership class. They're not just controlling a segment inside of the Republican Party. They're controlling the leadership class to where the leadership class is afraid to come out against the obvious lies and the rhetoric, etc. When that happens, the Democrats, in particular the corporate Democrats, they will become so attractive to the average voter that they will start taking votes for granted even more, because there's no other game in town, brother. There's no game in town whatsoever. So that is problematic in the system of democracy, to not have the common push and pull of individuals fighting for process and policy. That's the risk.
I'm gonna push back on you, Doctor.
Okay.
Let me push back on you. Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has been unapologetic, unafraid, and has shown nothing but backbone to push back on Donald Trump and his narrative.
No, sir. I will respond when you finish, brother.
And Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, she's pushed back. She
has for sure. Yes.
Faltered when it came to this January 6th commission.
But you only had two. You only had two that voted for it, brothers. Only two Republicans.
Those are two very important voices in Republican Party. And yes, they're not enough. But listen, Mitch McConnell has. I mean, look at the kinds of things that Donald Trump says about Mitch McConnell. Look at the kinds of things he says about Liz Cheney. Even Bill Barr in his most recent book I'm reading now said that Donald Trump's push on election fraud was BS.
He said, right, yes, but he didn't say it while he was Department of Justice.
He said it, but
he eventually said, right, he said it when he was no longer getting a paycheck. You're right, Armstrong. When that paycheck stopped being signed, brother, he did say it. You're correct, brother.
He said John Bolton has never backed down from pushing back on Donald Trump.
Okay, let me respond to some of this.
Okay.
Let me respond to some of this. First of all, John Bolton went on Fox News for a whole damn year interviewing to become a worker under Donald Trump, because I think Bolton is a smart dude, by the way, but he has not found a brown country he does not want to bomb. That's who John Bolton is. Bolton went on Fox News, became a contributor there for about a year, basically promoting himself to become an official with the Trump administration. He got the job. I think he knew from day one Trump was not a true believer in anything. I think he knew from day one Trump is not the real conservative guy, that he's corrupt at heart, that he believes he's bigger than democracy. But Bolton had a master plan. What was that master plan? Bolton is now a real multimillionaire, not a single-digit millionaire. He's a real multimillionaire because he went there, did the job, worked, and wrote a book. It comes out, he gets an insane advance, and I think he planned it from day one. Let's talk about Mitch McConnell, because I can't let you just say that statement about McConnell without rebuttal. McConnell is the same cat, and I don't understand how McConnell defies medical science, because he literally stands up with no backbone every day. Mitch McConnell is the guy who said, okay, the blood is on your hands, Mr. President. I mean, when Mitch McConnell said that, I'm looking back like, damn. I wish he would have had this kind of courage when Trump still had real power, but he didn't. Now, even though he said that, he then backed away from supporting the impeachment. And remember, brother, the impeachment is because Trump deserves it. He deserves, as crazy as he was as president, he deserves the history books to say, you got impeached twice. He deserves that. Would you not agree?
The process is what it is. But here's the thing that you're neglecting to me, Dr. Richey. Impeachment is a political tool.
It is, yes. It's not a prosecutorial tool, that's right.
It's a political one. And there are Republicans and Democrats who are so afraid and disgusted with Donald Trump and the power that he has, wanted to make sure that he had no chance of running for president again in 2024. And so, yes, Donald Trump has a lot of sway over the Republican Party. He still has a lot of sway of someone like Kevin McCarthy, even though Kevin McCarthy talked about that troubling conversation he had with him on January 6th when they were inside of the Capitol and he was trying to get the president to go on national TV to ask his supporters to back down because they felt very threatened. And they mentioned the fact that his vice president was in the US Capitol and the president never asked how he was doing. And still yet, even after all that, where it's revealed to him some of the character of the president, he still tries to find a way to support him. But I just want to say this. I want to come back to Mitch McConnell because you asked a very important question, Dr. Richey. And I think we should have these discussions because listen, all conservatives, I'm a conservative, I'm a third generation Republican, but listen, you cannot grow the party. And remember this, it's gonna take 2 to 3 election cycles before Donald Trump's personality is completely eliminated from this party. It's gonna take 2 or 3 election cycles.
I think that's at least. I think it may actually take more, but that's at least.
At least, that's still packing. But let me just remind your viewers this, and I'm so appreciative of being on, why people still support Donald Trump. It's not just because of his personality. There is this massive deregulation saving the average American household over roughly $3,100 a year. People don't really break this stuff down. He passed the tax cuts and the Jobs Act. He took America out of the Paris Climate Accord, no matter whether you agree with it or not, and he also took them out of the Iran nuclear deal. He built up the American military. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. He brokered the normalization pacts and peace deals in the Middle East with his Abraham Accords. He constructed, whether people want to criticize it or not, because you look at the disaster at the border now, more than the 400 miles of the new wall alongside the Mexican border, and his immigration policies work. He revised the immigration policies, leading to a dramatic drop in these border crossings. And he also increased the commitment to domestic energy. And he replaced NAFTA, which did not really work, with USMCA, and nominated and confirmed more than 200 federal judges. In addition,
right, okay.
So I just want.
And I'm glad you offered that, because you do provide context. And Armstrong, I respect the fact, because you got a whole lot of Republicans, they don't know what you just said. I mean, they support him, but you actually bring some policy dynamic to the table. So let me give you a rebuttal to some of that policy dynamic. Some of that stuff I just completely disagree with based on a policy core, but there are people on your side of the political aisle they completely agree with, right? So that's the reason why they are excited, in part, to vote for this individual based on personality, as well as some of those policies that I believe take us the wrong way. Let's be clear about some policy that impacted black folk. He signed this executive action that said we're gonna increase funding for HBCUs in a record way. Well, that mandate never got properly funded. I'm a graduate of an HBCU. I lecture at an HBCU. I got a doctorate from an HBCU. Those presidents of those HBCUs who were used as a photo op had to say in secret, this administration did not help us. Now, in fairness, neither did President Obama. I've said on my radio show, President Obama was no friend of HBCUs, but neither was Trump. He simply proclaimed to be. He also defunded the federal TRIO program. What is the federal TRIO program? And I know you know this, brother. Educational Talent Search and Upward Bound. Those programs are used significantly by HBCUs to be conduits for underserved communities and black students getting into college for the first time. He defunded that program. That was a huge blow. That grant money was required, the lifeline for many HBCUs around the country. And let's talk about criminal justice reform, because people like to talk about the act that he signed, which was a continuation of what President Obama did. Obama just didn't do it all the way, and he should have. So I can be critical of that. But on the other side of that act was him defunding reentry programs through the federal government, him eliminating the federal Pell Grant inside of federal prisons, him doubling down to protect federal prisons in the United States of America and not to eliminate them. And let's talk about household median income. Household median income for black families actually decreased under Trump, as well as home ownership for blacks. Now, did black people have more technical employment under Trump? Yes, but the number was trajecting in the right direction in the first place. But let's be clear about their ability to pay wages. While they had more technical employment, that was based on a U3 rating system rather than the U6 rating system. The Trump administration used a U3 rating system that said, based on every 30-day survey, if you worked 1 hour in 30 days, the administration reported that you were employed. A U6 rating system contextualizes the data and says it's seasonal, it's contractual, it pays the bills or not. But they use the U3 system. But go ahead, brother, I'll let you respond.
But I think you said something that's even deeper than the understanding that you're conveying here. And whether it was the Obama administration or the Bush administration or the Trump administration or the Biden administration now, if you're on the bottom rung of the economic ladder, if you're already poor and disenfranchised, whether you lived in Appalachia, whether you lived in the inner city, whether you live in the deep South, those policies and those programs are going to impact you more so than anyone else. And if you and I are very candid about this, if you're in the upper middle class or well off before any of these elected officials come into office, 8 times out of 10 times you will be. There's not really much that the government really does, Dr. Richey, to move people out of poverty and to move them out of their circumstances. The one thing I do give Trump credit for, particularly with historical black colleges and these land grant institutions, and particularly with their entrepreneur programs and these business set aside at SBA, he did understand the importance of creating minority ownership, sort of like what President Nixon gave us during his heyday, affirmative action, minority set-asides. Because the best way that you can really make a difference is in your communities, is that you empower them through ownership. And also, even Dr. Ben Carson's these opportunity zones where you go in and rebuild these communities through mental health by creating people with more skills, by having people in there tutoring them, and going back to this sort of this vocational school, because not everyone is cut out to go to a 4-year college, but there are skills that they need to learn. So yes, we can always piecemeal with past administrations on things that may have benefited the poor or may not have, but in all reality, the government really doesn't do much to change the direction.
Well, let me give some rebuttal to that. Let me give a little rebuttal to that, because what you just named is a government program. Opportunity Zones is a government program. It creates a tax abatement to allow investors to come in at a reduced tax rate to invest in the local community. Well, if you do it incorrectly, you can artificially inflate the property value around you, and it leads to gentrification or displacement. So you have to be thoughtful about how you implement that government program. So you can't say government can't do much when you just named a government program that can do a lot, right? So my second point.
Let me respond to that.
Go ahead.
The government is well-intentioned.
Okay.
There's some things that the government does get right. We agree.
Okay. Let me read some overall stats about, and this is a 30-year collection of Democratic presidents and their policies versus a 30-year collection of Republicans and leadership presidents and their policies. Under Democratic presidents, black families' incomes grew an average of $895 a year, but grew only by $142 under Republican presidents. The black unemployment rate fell by a net of 7.9% across 26 years of Democratic leadership, but it actually went up a net of 13.7% under 26 years of Republican presidencies. Across the years of Democratic leadership, black poverty has actually declined under Democrats by a net of 23.6 percentage points, but it has actually grown by 3 percentage points when Republicans occupied the White House. So that's a historical perspective. Let me give you another perspective, because I think you're pro-death penalty, correct?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I read that. Now let me read another stat. If you're pro-death penalty, brother, I want you to just consider something, because usually we say, hey, the death penalty is to be a deterrent to crime, especially those violent murders, right? Premeditated homicide. But the reality is, the data shows it doesn't really deter crime like people think. During the last 20 years, a recent survey was done, and I can send this to you, brother. The homicide rate in states with the death penalty has been 48 to 101% higher than states without the death penalty. So states without the death penalty are doing something to deter these particular death penalty crimes more so than states with the death penalty.
But I think for some of us, it's not about whether it's a deterrent or not.
It's revenge, right? It's, say what it is, brother. It's revenge, correct?
No.
Oh, come on, man. That's what it really is. Come on,
speak? Can I speak?
Yeah, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that. For me, first of all, if you are going to administer the death penalty, whether it's through lethal injection or firing squad, you should be absolutely 100% certain that that person committed that crime. If there's any doubt, even a fraction of it, it should weigh with the accuser. Let me say that first. Okay. You know, when I look at what continues to happen in society and why people kill and kidnap and rape and destroy families and lives for no reason at all, my attitude is this: at least if you put that person to sleep forever, they will not have the opportunity to commit that crime again. That's for me. And I also think the family should have some say-so in that. If the family says this is what the penalty should be, because they're the ones who are affected by it the most. But for me in my household, if someone committed the kinds of acts that we read about today, put them to death. So you make sure that that person does not commit that kind of heinous crime again.
I got you. I
don't think prisons do a great job of reforming people. I think sometimes they come out, they're more angry and worse than they were before.
Yeah, I agree that there are some people that should be locked away forever, but you can't have a policy that's antithetical to your belief. The belief is thou shalt not kill, right? You should not commit murder. You should not kill out of revenge. But then the policy says under a particular circumstance, you can't actually kill people. Armstrong, lock them up, throw away the key, brother, because the states that do that have a lower rate of these murders.
Brother, have you read the Bible? And what the Bible?
Oh yeah, I mean the Bible's tough, brother. The Bible also says that it is an abomination to burn incense, brother. And I burn incense, so I guess I'm an abomination, brother.
Brother, we pick and choose what works for us in the Bible and other things. We know how that works for us. That works.
Exactly.
That works.
Armstrong, I'm flat out of time, brother, but it has been a pleasure chopping it up with you on some of these topics, man. Thank you.
We're not too far apart.
Now we're really not. We're really not, man. But on some stuff, hell yeah.
Yes, that's okay. But we can be civil and respectful and learn from each other. That's what it's about.
Man. I appreciate you being on the program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.